Upper Camp Creek resident here. Let's see. Sorry.
It's on.
All right. Sorry, I'm not really a microphone guy, but I'm an Upper Camp Creek resident here. I've been, visiting this area my entire life. My grandparents lived right down the street here, and I've been coming here all my life until recently when the property was passed to my mother and now down to me. Basically, my wife and I are making a family up here, wonderful time, but we've kind of run into one problem, and it seems to be one that many of us share. I am a computer programmer. I work out of the state of New Mexico and telecommute for everything that I do. And about 2 years ago, they called me up and they informed me that if I can't figure out a better internet connection for myself, I'm going to lose my job. That's simple. So right about then, I started trying to figure this out. As many of you may have seen, I look like a crazy person driving up and down the roads. I would pull off to the side of the road, stick an antenna out my window, this one right here, and I'd be waving this around up in the air, trying to get a signal back to my house. Unfortunately, although I got something working, it wasn't working too well. But in my adventures while driving around, I found out how many other people are affected by this problem. And, well, as it's pretty clear here, it seems to be more and more. And not just our neighborhood up here in the Camp Creek area, but all the way up to McKenzie, all the way up to Mohawk Valley, and I'm even getting folks down from, I believe it's Dorina to the south here. I apologize, like I said, didn't grow up here. But I got folks from Dorina and Veneta who are already contacting me, all because of a couple of plywood signs that are posted around. So it seems to be a pretty outstanding problem. Now, I guess going down into it, we're trying to do something that is not only actually done, but done by a couple of folks that are here today. We've invited some other companies and representatives for other WISP, or wireless internet service provider companies, that provide a wireless signal to your household at either, let's call it near city cable speeds. Many of these companies have, well, the exact business model that we're looking at right now, which is let's get these rural neighborhoods connected and improve the lives of the members of the community. Now, as we've been doing a lot of research, basically we found a couple of different locations that we're very interested in attempting to place an internet tower. These towers could kind of blend in, the best that we can, let's call it, but due to the type of technology, which is called line of sight wireless, or some refer to it as microwave. This type of technology requires a direct line of sight. So therefore, we need a hilltop. Not only a hilltop, but one that many of us can see. The more people can see it, the better. Now, it comes down not only to the hilltop location, but the sense of community. Now, I put a nice little blurb on the brochures there, talking about a sense of community and how, in some cases, it may be advantageous for many of us to think only of our neighborhood, and at other times it might be required to help out another neighborhood getting going. Right now, we are looking at one location, actually directly behind the church here. This hilltop is called Vickery Hilltop. We are attempting to get permission from the county to place an antenna up there and start providing internet service to folks on Camp Creek and Upper Camp Creek. Some of the folks that are very interested in this know that that is not necessarily their area, and I do apologize for that. But the plus side to this is once we get one area going, well, we get steam and we start moving to others. We have already done a little bit of research out in the Marcola area, as well as the Mohawk Valley area, and we are finding that it may be possible out there to do the exact same thing. But again, it is going to require getting something running. And without something running, we have no income towards moving to another location, and no way of funding that. So this meeting here today is basically to go over what we're trying to do, how we're trying to do it, and hopefully to go ahead and start taking the next step. As of Tuesday this week, I actually incorporated us. We are Lane County Internet Collective LLC. Nothing like a tongue twister. But we are incorporated. We have a wonderful P.O. box and all of that jazz. But what this means to us is we can now move towards the next step, which in theory, I would love to get this going as a nonprofit. To do that, as you may have noticed when you came in, there's a whole bunch of signups, and I do mean a lot of them. There are many different signups for board member positions, as well as signups to help in various ways, in which I'll talk about here shortly. To officially form a nonprofit, basically we need a set of bylaws, we need a board, and we need to apply for it. It is not a quick procedure. It is something that can take several months. But by having a singular company, or an LLC in this case, to start, at least we can get things moving forward. As of this moment right now, the next set of steps is to look into getting our board formed. Once our board is formed, we can start attempting to fund this project and then move forward on actually building and supplying internet. That kind of brings us to another point, which is funding. At this exact moment, we are looking at about $10,000 to $15,000 to get this going, which sounds like quite a bit. It is quite a bit. I will say, honestly, I've actually invested about $4,000 into this as it sits right now. So it is something that I know can be done as long as we get it going in the right direction. That's where the nonprofit came in. Is we were hoping to achieve a 501c3 status. That way, any donations to the organization could become tax deductible. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem like something that we would be able to get done before we get the funding going for the tower itself. Now, what this first set of funding would be covering is the actual construction of the tower, the wiring to that tower. Now, this is all dependent on county approval to build and create the tower itself, and then initial antennas and hardware that would be required to do this project. Now, the internet connection itself would actually come, I'm going to say the phrase, somewhere from town, because looking at different companies, it can come anywhere from Main Street and 72nd all the way to Eugene. As long as they can see that tower, we can beam out a extremely high-speed internet connection that can then be cut up to each one of our customers. Now, as many of you have the brochures here, inside the front page is an image of an example installation. Now, right now, unfortunately, I only have this one for example, but this is one of the many styles of antennas, actually one of the largest of them, that would set up for this connection. These connections require, as I said earlier, line of sight. So they require a visible connection to either the antenna itself, or potentially, coming back to the community, one of your neighbors. So if we find a home that potentially cannot see a location or has no way of visibly seeing it, if we can find a neighbor across the street who can see it, we can always bounce that signal. So it becomes a very important step to have the community involved, especially when it comes to hooking up more and more folks that potentially have non-line of sight. So, yeah. My apologies, folks. I had some really pretty graphics for you guys. I tried to print off a couple of them, but I'll say, let's just say when it rains, it pours. 10 a.m. this morning, for whatever reason, my provider decided to go ahead and just kill my internet, flick the switch off. No telephone either. So I haven't had an internet connection all day, which is where all my fancy graphics are. So I had to drive into town to print off a couple of these, which clearly doesn't work too well. But yeah. Moving on, we've talked a little bit about the problem itself. For any of those who may not feel as affected, the statistics in there of the 160 people that we've polled so far, well, the current average price for just an internet connection is $90 in this area per month, and that is not telephone included, just internet. Current average satisfaction is rating at 34%. This is clearly a bit of a problem. Each company differs, with one company dropping all the way down to 20%, and also up to $200 a month. So let's just say, for some of us, we're very fortunate. Others, not so much, including one very, very unfortunate family who is paying around $825 a month. Yes. They have multiple accounts and multiple services just to do their job. So, very similar to me, it sounds like this person does their job online and requires both satellite companies and then CenturyLink as a backup. And every month fills up all three of them. So, this is a problem. Sorry. Moving forward, as we were talking, we do need to work on building up a board of directors. And those sign-ups are in the rear here. If anybody is willing to volunteer, there is some specific position sign-ups available back there, which are set up to each individual board position, and then there is let's call it a general board sign-up. Go ahead.
Can you describe a situation where this is already working somewhere and how it's working?
There's actually quite a few of them. I apologize. For anyone who didn't hear, he asked if I could describe a situation in which this is working. Sorry. There's not only quite a few different situations where this is working. It's actually working currently down the street at the bottom of Camp Creek. As some of you guys may have noticed driving up Camp Creek, on the right-hand side, right after you turn off of Mohawk there, you'll notice a couple of homes on the right side that have these small dishes, about, 8 inches in diameter, that are out next to the road. These are actually customers of one of our guests today, who provides internet through the exact same means that we're attempting to provide. These small dishes connect up to an antenna that is on the Coburg Hills, and in their case, just from what I've talked to the folks about that are down there, they currently purchase 15 megabit per second through them, which for those less technologically inclined, 15 megabit a second means you can go ahead and actually watch a video on your computer if you want to. You want to watch Netflix? You're okay. As opposed to what we currently have, which is you want to watch Netflix? Go ahead and start it loading, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Now, what does that cost those folks?
Honestly, I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize. Might be able to get an estimate. One of the representatives from both the whisk companies in town are here today, and I will speak with them and see if they would mind sharing a little bit of information towards the end here. All right. Go ahead, sir.
You've done your homework, okay.
Yes.
Back in the 1930s, 1940s, under the Roosevelt administration, some of you gentlemen may remember, I did, they had a thing called the Rural Electrification Program,
Yes, sir.
where they brought electricity into communities. I lived in a small farming community in upstate New York, and we used to play in the woods when they were blowing the phone poles in, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Today, with the, not only the demand, but the requirement for internet connections, have you, approached government for grants?
I have.
Okay.
So,
Like I said, you're doing your homework,
So-
because this is no longer a playtime convenience so you can play games
That's
on your
correct.
internet. These are businesses.
That's correct.
I know people that live in cities that work for the federal government in Washington, but they live in a small town out of San Francisco.
Yes, sir.
This happens all the time. That's the push. That's the big push that has to be met, because there are many grants available, like college. Most people don't realize that their kids can get a grant to go to high school, or pardon, go to college. But that's a really important step to take, because this is no longer just a plaything.
And that's correct. So, speaking towards the grants, the research that I've done into them, unfortunately, although in the long run, grants may be a great way to look into this. Basically, federal rural internet connection grants, on average, take about 18 months to apply for and to get the funding for.
Yeah, no.
They are a lengthy process, and not only that, they are often turned down if there is an alternative. And in our case, technically speaking, DSL is considered broadband. So anyone who has, even if they cannot get CenturyLink or something because it is full, just because it's in the area, your area can be shot down by the federal grants. So they do take quite a bit of research and knowledge to get to apply for. Once again, this goes back to the board. It would be wonderful to start getting some, no disrespect, not saying that anyone has not attempted to help, as we do have quite a few folks who have tried to help me out on this. It would be wonderful to start getting some help with this, because to be completely frank, I'm running out of time in a day. I'm actually a volunteer with a community organization around here, as well as a volunteer with a couple of different nonprofits in the Springfield and Eugene areas. And then, of course, I work full-time and have 3 kids. So I'm running out of time each day to do all this stuff. Perfect example, I have about 10 more signs that I've created up for this project that are currently sitting at my house, all ready to be put out. I just haven't found the time to put them out. So it's always great to get a little bit more help in, and in that exact respect, a little bit more knowledge. If anybody has the knowledge, it is wonderful to get some help on that. Back there, as well as the board member sign-ups, are a couple of volunteer sign-ups. There's a general volunteer and a skilled volunteer. This is not to say that general volunteers are not skilled people. It is basically a request skilled volunteers, we will eventually be looking for folks who have things like tree climbing certification, or let's call it knowledge. Electricians that can help us make sure that things are done to code, builders, all kinds of different things that could potentially help us out, including, and not limited to, IT guys. Anybody who's willing to learn this, if it continues forward, I would be more than happy to help teach anyone who's willing to learn. As for the general side, the general volunteers looking for help on things such as making signs, getting signs out, literally printing, cutting, gluing, and pasting things to help get the word out. Heck, making brochures and potentially sending them out. So these are all things that can help us get our knowledge or our word out and inform the community of what we're trying to do here. So.
Are you aware that they're already laying fiber optic cable?
So the fiber optic cable is laid. It is completely done all the way down Kent Creek. Unfortunately, the fiber optic cable that Charter just laid is not for us. Not only is it not for us, they're not even willing to give us a line on it. That is a direct line from Veneta to Coburg. For whatever reason, it goes down.
They did say it's coming in 2019.
So they did say that, and I won't necessarily say that anyone's being dishonest, but to be completely fair, in 2008, when I contacted them, they told me that it was coming in 2009. So I'm not going to say that it can't happen, but I've been hearing for years the exact same thing. You call them in 1 year and they'll give you a year plus one.
If they just laid the line, you'd think it would be coming, you know?
So that, again, that line is a non-splittable line. It is a, what is it? It's a, I apologize. The gentleman that I was speaking with who was installing it had a technical term for it, but basically it's not one that you want to cut and split. So they would actually have to run us a second line along with that.
Well, I heard it was just a loop, and they were going to pull off the loop to feed everybody.
So that's what I thought it was as well, and that's what they told me it's not. So I'm not exactly sure why, especially because fiber in theory can be split at any point. So I'm not really sure on that one. I apologize. Hopefully a Charter person at some point can give us a little bit more information on that. I'm sorry.
You know there is another fiber cable, and I understand it to be running on those poles you can see out those windows. It's eWeb's fiber. And they do have dark strands on it. It runs from, I believe it runs from the Hayden Bridge intake to Leeburg Dam, and it happens to come up Camp Creek, so it can pick up the facility here, and then they use radio frequency to go from Leeburg to Carmen. The network manager for eWeb actually knew of this meeting. I communicated with him a little bit. I was hoping he would be here, but I've been looking around and I don't see him. They use 2 or 3 strands on what I understand to be an 8-strand cable.
Wow.
So I think that's right. Now this is, I could be wrong.
If that was the case and they were willing to lease it, that would actually solve a lot.
There's an
problems.
issue of cost.
Uh-huh.
And a couple of years ago, I think eWeb management would have been very reasonable in a community situation.
Yes, ma'am.
Current administration of eWeb is much more focused on reducing their rates and managing their business. So I don't know that it would be cost effective. But I bring it up as one of the alternatives that I think we should look at. Another question for you on the subject of 501c3. Have you looked at the possibility possibility of using an existing 501c3?
I just don't know of one around here that we could utilize for a project like this, that's bylaws are in the fashion that I would like to see this organization utilize, let's call it. Basically, the bylaws in which I have, let's call it drafted, at this point give, in most cases, the power to the board. In some cases, things such as a delta of a 10% cost change to customers, anything greater than or less than, plus or minus 10% on anybody's bill is actually forced to be a community vote to ensure that everybody is in agreement with these changes that have to be done.
I'm quite sure that bylaws would have to be modified
Yes.
to do this, but that's a lot easier. That's something that I've done personally as opposed to trying to hire a lawyer to get a 501c3 status.
Yes.
So, I just suggest that, I know of one that might be an option.
Mm.
I'm not sure.
If you have a little bit of time, I would be very interested in talking about this.
I'll just tell you what it is. Jeff and I are both on the board for it. It's Mackenzie Community Development Corporation. And our service area expands from the edge of the Springfield Urban Growth Boundary to the headwaters of the Mackenzie.
Yeah.
So it covers most of it.
And you guys, you're on the website. Yeah, okay. I wanted to make sure I knew who I was speaking with. So that is.
It would require significant change. There's no question.
Yes, ma'am.
But I just suggested as something that might be explored as opposed to trying to create a new one from scratch.
Yes, ma'am. I'll be completely frank with everyone. At this point, I'm kind of out of things to discuss. I'd be more than willing to open up to any questions whatsoever.
What did you want to get from us tonight?
So basically, tonight I'm trying to give you guys the information on what we're trying to do, where we're trying to do it, and we really need to get a board together, as well as volunteers in so many different ways. Like I said,
Stephen,
oh.
sound cannot hear you in the back.
Oh, I am so sorry.
All right, so we're going to try to correct that for you.
I'm so sorry.
No problem. I know it's not fun to talk
Oh,
to you about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry about that. Sorry. Yeah. So what I'm trying to do tonight, basically, we really need to. I feel like every time that I've had somebody either call on the telephone or send me an email, it's been the same set of questions. How are we going to do this? What does it look like for me? And why would anybody else help? Especially if they're not from the same community. And basically, that's what I was hoping to cover tonight. That I feel like I've touched on each one of those. The other large one is the need for volunteers. The more help and support that we get, the faster we can start pushing things through with groups such as the county. We've spoken with the county, who seem very interested when as long as it benefits them elsewhere. So they are looking for potentially, if we place up a tower, they would be in large support if we also provided radio access for the emergency services on that tower, which I think would actually be a great idea. So, is there?
Stephen, could I come up and say a few words?
Sure.
Well, one of the things that I would like to address here is whether it's actually accurate to call this a community effort, because I found that most of the community around my neighborhood didn't know anything about this, and we're all in favor of what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, my expertise, and I'm a professional geologist, and I've worked a lot with satellite imagery and aerial photography, and now we've got LiDAR, and I could certainly be of some help in trying to pick the right location, but our private park isn't the right location, and a lot of people like yourself didn't even know this was our own private little county park that we cherish dearly, and that and I appreciate that you would try to make this low impact, but when you go and put a cell phone tower up on this hill, then that opens the door for this to be a designated cell tower area. And what we've seen all around us is that when one of these peaks gets a cell tower, then it gets another and another, and pretty soon the thing is ruined. And a lot of these people really cherish the view of our one little unspoiled spot here. And what we would like to do is help you pick an appropriate spot. And I brought my nephew with me, who quite frankly, he's an expert in this kind of stuff. He has a college degree in microwaves, and he spent 8 years in the military putting this stuff into practice in Bosnia and Afghanistan. And one of the things that we have been discussing are all the different alternatives that would be available to this kind of effort that wouldn't despoil our beautiful little park here. Now, I bet you most of you didn't know this was a beautiful little park, and it's not only a beautiful little park, it's a dedicated memorial. And our friend Fred Keppel dedicated this thing to his mother, and there's a beautiful little plaque that you found, and if you'd read the plaque, it reads like this. It says, Dorothy...
Could you get the microphone back up?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Dorothy Vickery Riverside Park. These 80 acres and half-mile of McKenzie River bank were deeded to Lane County in 1981 for permanent use as a park by Frederick Keppel as a memorial to his mother, Dorothy Vickery Keppel. And then below that is the quote, "The earth was created with the assistance of the sun, and it should be left as it was. Chief Joseph." Now, Fred was really into Native American stuff, and this peak, our little park here, was a very special Native American place. And I found Native American artifacts up there that I don't tell people about, but Fred knew about. And what this selection of location is going to do is that it's going to bifurcate our community between those who want to keep this thing as Fred intended it and those who are more interested in high-speed internet. And personally, I don't think that's ethical. I don't think it is moral for us to go and degrade Dorothy's memorial just so we can get higher speed internet and watch Netflix. I mean, now I know that high-speed internet.
Do you have an alternative location?
How what?
Do you have an alternative location you're recommending?
Oh yeah, I mean, Stephen has come up with alternative locations, and my nephew Woody has come up with some really good suggestions. And one of them was that we might approach the power companies to ask if we could put the thing on their towers, if we come to them as a united community and ask them to put it on their tower. But here's another thing, is there's a number of different things, but one thing is the description you gave me of the idea of being able to put this on the top of a tree or something. That just isn't going to work, because when the wind blows, you're going to lose your connection. And so it has to be a solid tower. That means they're going to want to put a road up my beautiful trail.
No, sir.
Well, what I said is true. Yes, ma'am?
I happen to know Fred Keppel, and there was a fellow named Fred who found his perfect homestead on the mountain on the River McKenzie. In loving memory of his mother, he dedicated that park to be used as a natural park, enjoyed in perpetuity for everybody. Fred entrusted for safekeeping his mountain to me. When he deeded ownership, he deeded over stewardship for me. And not only, he very specifically was concerned, he didn't want any commercial ventures. He wanted this park for the community to enjoy, to hike, to see the vistas. He didn't want it to go, one of the zoning, it's zoned E30, agricultural 30-acre piece. And he did not want it to go to commercial development where they have condominiums running around the mountain. He could have opted for that, but he donated to Lane County this park to be used. And he specifically said in his deed, because he was concerned about this, he didn't want Lane County bartering. He didn't want them to change ownership with it. You know, sometimes they change or sell. He didn't want that happening with this park. And he specifically put in his deed, the said parcel is to be used for park purposes only and will warrant and defend the same against all persons who may lawfully claim the same. So as stewardship, I'm for cable. I'm for, you know, if there's an alternative way to do this, but I'm adamantly opposed because this does not honor his wishes, and you're going to skip it again.
Thank you.
Mr. Evans.
Yes, Joe, I just found out today also that Fred's ashes are buried beneath that plaque. And any disturbance of that road would disturb his ashes, and that wasn't his intention at all. And the people that buried his ashes there, that was not the intention of what would happen to Fred's ashes. And he also, you know, he had the opportunity to build his house up there and decided not to because he wanted to leave it natural. And he elected to purchase down the river and lived there till he died. And then when he died, his ashes were buried under the plaque of his mother's plaque.
That's true. I was one of the people that was there.
Yes.
His family, he was from back east, and some of his family members were able to come out here, and we had a little memorial. Some of Fred's closest and dearest friends were there, and that is where his ashes are.
Yes.
I just want to clarify. I've been hearing private park and I've been hearing public park. So,
The
and I've
truth-
been hearing our park. I don't know what our means. I know maybe 20 years ago I went up there and it was almost impossible to get there, and I don't think there's been any improvements to the access, so that confuses me as well. Can you cover those issues?
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you. I've been going up there since I was 8 years old. And the access has changed over the years, but I have been personally maintaining that trail for 28 years myself now, and it is a beautiful trail. And Stephen, when he went up there, he didn't know the trail was there. he admits that he felt a little embarrassed when he found that beautiful trail to find his way back then.
So,
Yes.
so this meeting was for an internet collective, not against Vickery. So it could be that a board is formed and decides that's not the best location. But how are we going to use this meeting to propose positive solutions?
Well, right. I mean, I concur with you completely. And the thing that I want to point out here is that there are a lot of people who are going to be totally against that, putting that thing up there at the park.
We're hearing some of that tonight. We're hearing
Yes, sir.
that.
Right, and so
yet
what
you
I'm
have to get on the
suggesting is
board
that-
and choose another location instead of taking over the meeting.
Well, right. I said I'd be glad to help find another meeting, but a lot of people need to be informed of these details because that has not been done.
Sir, that's what this meeting was about.
Right.
That's why there's,
Okay, but did you inform people that this was a memorial to Fred Keppel's mother and that he wanted it preserved as it was? And I find it actually unethical to take this splendid little gift that was given to us by Fred and say we wanted to spoil his mother's memorial because we want higher speed internet? Today I called HughesNet. HughesNet says that they now have excellent satellite coverage for everybody in Upper Camp Creek. Now it's going to cost you a little more.
I have 8 people here who say that they don't.
Is that? Well, I mean, this is supposed to be
Average quality for HughesNet, 2.3.
Yeah.
Average satisfaction out of 10. So.
Yeah.
Are you guys opposed to us forming a LLC and getting rural internet?
Oh, not in the least,
All
but
right,
we're
okay.
just opposed to location. Like, we're willing to
Okay,
be on the
I
board
that's
of
what-
whatever, right?
No, I understand that.
Okay.
This young man is trying to form an LLC and get a nonprofit together, and I understand that he picked a spot and he's trying to do that with the tower. But you're going to form a nonprofit corporation. Everybody's going to have their input. Nothing's going to go up there, and I appreciate you doing that. You know, but we need to form this group of people, the neighbors and all that stuff, and do that. And that's probably not going to be the spot. There'll probably be some better spots to do it.
Okay,
So
count me in.
No, so I think that I've formed some nonprofit corporations before, and I think that's the procedure we need to do. I understand everybody's reluctance, you know, to saying that's where the tower's going and all that stuff. You're probably going to get about 5 different spots by the time you get the spot you want, by the time you form this corporation and you find the spots. And as far as putting them in trees, they do it all the time. You're not, when you think about putting them in a tree, you're thinking about putting them in the top of the tree. If you go 20 foot up a tree, that's what they're talking about.
Even at the very top,
No,
even with
I
sway, these
understand.
things are not a laser
I
beam,
understand
they're more of a wide,
I
they go
understand.
back and forth.
What's the island you were talking about?
Island.
Orcas
Orcas Island,
Island is
yes.
a fine example. There's a video on there of how they've done it in their community.
That Orcas Island thing was put on a water tank that couldn't sway if you wanted it to.
No.
Those 2 trees.
Yeah,
Watch
but
the whole video.
the receiving thing.
I understand.
They're on trees.
And I don't
If
want
you
to.
watch the whole video, they place
I
multiple on.
don't want to get down there, but there's ways to do what they've done, and it's solid stuff. So all I'm saying is I'll help you form a 501c3. We'll get there, and then we'll worry about where the towers are going and whose property it's on and all that other stuff. I understand I understand your concerns, and I'm not trying to, but you're way down the road from where these guys are going to be
And
in
also,
a year.
to be very clear to anyone here, I just want to be very clear. I'm not trying to desecrate anyone's memorial or anything like this. I pulled up a map and it says County Park. I didn't know that until you had contacted me, I had no idea of any of this. So, to be very clear, not at all trying to be disrespectful here.
Well, and in truth, none of the people who live around that hill knew that this was being proposed. I mean, the only person who knew that this site was being proposed that I heard of was Pastor Craig. But
How much did an attorney want to do the 501c3?
I haven't even spoken to one yet.
I'm going to suggest that you can try doing it all yourself. You talk to an, look around. There's some attorneys that do.
I have somebody in mind who might be
Okay,
able
and
to
find
get it
out
for this.
exactly what it's going to cost.
Inexpensive.
Do the fundraising, get the money, get the attorney, because if you sit there and try to do it yourself, it's going to take you 3 times as long,
Yes,
and
sir.
people will lose interest.
well, one of the thoughts I had, if this is actually a community effort, why don't we just take the internet off of the fiber optic line here and put the tower here on community property here at the church? We could have a tower.
Can I just see a show of hands? I just want to see a show of hands of the people in this room who would like to have high-speed internet. That's what I want to see.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
High-speed internet.
Then we're beating a dead horse here. Yeah. We need to move forward.
You made your point.
Okay. There's a bunch of us want to protect that park. That's my point.
You got it.
Okay, we got it.
Made it. That's the point. Very clear.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna say thank you
like there really is a need. There's some details to work out, but with all of that said, just thank you for starting something and bringing us.
I would like to say thank you to everyone that is here. Anyone who can't make it, of course, still thankful that anyone has shown support. Projects like this, they don't just happen overnight. Now, going back to, like I said, we have a couple of guests that are from companies who have done this in town. To be completely frank with everyone here and straightforward with my personal intentions, if somebody else comes out here and does this and out to other neighborhoods, I have no interest in doing it. I mean no disrespect, but if another company comes out here tomorrow and says, here's high-speed internet, it's at a reasonable price and actually good quality, I'm good. I'm all done. If that does not happen, I want to keep pushing forward with this and continue to try to serve our community. For those of you guys who are not aware, some of you, I have informed of some of my personal plans. As we get this going, of course, no decisions are final, all go to the board, but my hope is that any nonprofits, any community organizations, places such as this church, the Grange, the school, any other Granges, churches, youth homes, anything like this, I would like to be able to provide to these places for free, just as a community service. And I feel like, at least moving up here, I find it harder each day to feel that same sense of community that I personally felt 20 years ago when coming up here. And I feel like a project like this may actually help bring us together and help out our neighbors as we do it. So, of course, the sign-ups.
One of the community togetherness thing, if I understand right, you told me you couldn't find anybody in the community who wanted the thing on their property.
No, so going back to locations and why. Yeah, okay. Let's just put this to bed. The reason that I've suggested this land, suggested, not guaranteed, not going to go into that, is down to the one and only one reason: it's county owned. Okay, the few hilltop landowners that have been out here that I have contacted who seem even slightly interested want amounts of money that I feel like a nonprofit could not pay. We are talking about a bottom line of approximately $2,800 a month to do what we're trying to do. That includes power, the actual internet, and trying to keep the stuff running. When you cut that up between 150 customers, 100 customers, whatever, we're talking about a pretty reasonable price. When you add in there an additional rental, tower rental fee of $1,000 a month, or so on and so forth, for using these other hilltop properties, it suddenly brings up your costs to every single one of your customers 30-35%, which then we're getting back into that range of why would we do this if we're just paying the same thing? I mean, yes, it would be great to have better internet, but it would also be wonderful to see all of our bills drop by a significant amount. Yeah.
Well, there's also the issue of equipment security. If we go and put our money into the cooperative effort to buy equipment, it's going to have to be secure, and we want that on private property instead of the Lane County Park.
That is something to consider.
So a fence around it, 12-foot tall with razor wire around it. With a fence 12-foot tall with razor wire on top.
Right, well there goes the destruction of our county park again, see? Razor wire in our county park.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned a couple of companies are here that do this. Could they address us and tell us a little bit about it?
I will say, y'all are more than welcome to if you would like to. I didn't ask them to prior, so I don't want to put them on the spot if they don't want to be on the spot. Would you like to, Steve?
I'm happy to be on the spot.
Yeah, you're more than welcome.
But I'm sure I'll do more.
And have we missed anybody on the sign up for a mailing list? Did we miss any rows?
Hi. I'm not great at public speaking. So I'm Steven with Excess Media. We're a high-speed internet provider. We've been in business about 20 years. It's a family-owned business. My dad started the company. Actually, the company was founded in Junction City. It's where I went to high school, middle school. Lived on Laurel Street. And my dad wanted high-speed internet. And we didn't have it. This was before Quest was there, before they even became CenturyLink. This was before Comcast. So we went to the city of Junction City, made a deal with them, shot it off the water tower, and voila, we had some wireless high-speed internet, which was 1.5 meg at the time, to our house. And we were
But
like
it was
the first
real
ones.
1.5.
It was our 1.5. It was great. And then our neighbors, they asked about service, and next thing you know, we were connecting other people in Junction City. Heard from some people in Harrisburg. They wanted the same thing, so we shot a connection off the Covert Hills. Got Harrisburg connected, and then realized this vantage point from the Covert Hills was pretty good. Could see a lot of homes, and maybe we ought to connect some other people too. So that is how my dad's business grew. My dad isn't in the business anymore, it's my business, and we have made it a point to serve the areas that are neglected. So we're talking about rural areas around Bonita, Crow, Lowell, Pleasant Hill, Dexter. We go down to Marcola Valley. I'm thinking that the connections he's talking about are the ones that we're providing. We're up to 25 is kind of our baseline now.
Nice.
The maximum price is $90 a month for our services. We have some customers who are paying a little more, but we're working on dropping those. The majority of our customers pay us no more than $90 a month. But we have prices that also start as low as 30, so it kind of just depends on what you want.
Is it still 1.5 meg?
No. It's a little bit faster. And actually, that's kind of a good point. So, we've upgraded our technology in 20 years, probably, 10 times. Like a wholesale, replace all of the equipment across our entire network. So where are we today? We have 43 employees. Most of them are employed in the Eugene area. I'm really proud of that. It feels really good. I was the first employee hired back in 2007. And we offer fiber services. So you may have heard about a downtown fiber project in Eugene. We're involved in that. So we're really doing a lot of fiber, but wireless is still the fastest growing part of our network. So we serve about 1,500 square miles in Lone County. This area is very difficult to serve, which is why we haven't come here. The hilltops are a little shorter, and the hilltops that are around here are really hard to access, and there's not a whole lot of power. But I've talked to Stephen about it, and we are really committed to trying to make something work. Certainly community as supportive as yours is really great. And so this is the kind of thing where, we had somebody, I don't know if you know where Burke Drive is, Ferguson, west of Junction City. We had a couple people approach us and say, we really want internet out here. And I'm like, gosh, this is it's a really hard area to serve, and we figured it out. And we can figure it out here too. Just takes work. So, yeah, we use the same wireless technology he's talking about. Those are our prices, those are our speeds. It's a family-owned business. Yeah, that there's other people here who do something similar. I can answer questions if anybody, or you guys can say something, it's up to you.
Yeah, do you view Excess Media as being able to work with our co-op, or it's one or the other?
No, I don't think so. And frankly, I think if you have multiple choices, that's only a good thing for the community, right? So I wouldn't have any expectation that Excess Media comes out here, offers services, and we just block everyone else from doing it. I think the best outcome for the community is you have more choices. And that's how we've always operated our business. So, if we put up a tower, I wouldn't have necessarily any problem with any other competitor offering their services off of the same tower. No, I actually talked to Stephen about maybe the community could help put up towers or put up installations or work with property owners, and then we can lease tower space or whatever and offer our services so that the community doesn't have to do the technical stuff, and we can, you know, there's so many different arrangements. Even including giving back to the community or neighborhoods. We've done that in other areas. We did a fiber to the home project in the city of Dayton and Willamina, which is in Yamhill County. We worked with the school district, connected every home and business and the school district to fiber gigabit service. And the more people that connected to the service, the higher the percentage that we gave back to the community. So I think right now in Dayton we're around 25% of all of the gross revenue we generate goes back to the school district. And we fund, you know, things like little micro grants and things like that. So teachers say, hey, I've got this little project I want to do, and you know, we fund that. So we've done things like that in other neighborhoods too, and we'd be happy to do something like that here.
So what, would you guys sell us chunks of bandwidth if we set up our own communities thing, or would it be advantageous? Huh?
Of course.
No?
Yes.
So you act as the ISP.
So I mean, would it be advantageous for us to buy it from you because you're buying large chunks instead of like going to
yeah, you could. And you could buy it from me, or I'm sure Stephen's found a number of different providers. We have tower service all over the place that we could provide.
Because we live way upriver, and there's some towers up there. eWeb has a tower right over our house, so.
Yeah, I'm really familiar. I work with eWeb a lot. I don't remember.
Is that good or bad?
Well, eWeb dark fiber is great. The problem is they have no splice faults between the Hidden Bridge location and up the Mackenzie. They have slack loops in case somebody hits a telephone pole, they need to repair it. But eWeb will not splice into those slack loops, because if they do, and somebody hits a pole, they have no way to repair their
Well,
fiber.
I'm thinking microwave up there.
Yeah, so you could lease fiber all the way from Springfield to way out there if you want. eWeb charges $54 a mile for their dark fiber. So if you're talking 20
Well,
miles.
they let us put up our own tower or stuff on their towers.
You'd have to build fiber from where they are. They would not allow you to colo on their tower, but you could put up your own tower. You just have to get fiber from where they end to where your tower is.
Oh, they won't let us use their towers.
No, I've tried.
That's why they won't let the phone company use it. All right.
Yeah, and I have cards and information and stuff. I'm happy to provide them, and my office is in downtown Eugene, so I'm really accessible.
Sweet.
I'm just like you guys. I live in the county too. But yeah, finding a home was challenging with wireless service. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did the folks from Emerald want to come up and say anything? Are the folks from Emerald here? Okay. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. I get really bad T-Mobile service at my house. So have you talked to T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T about leasing a tower if we put one up?
I've actually made a point not to. About 20 years ago here, yes, I'm sorry. So the question was whether or not I've spoken with cell providers to have them lease either from us or us lease from them. And I've actually made a point not to. About 20 years ago here in this area, the building of a cell phone tower, I don't know, about a mile down the road on the right-hand side, was shot down. It was almost unanimously shot down from the community. To be completely fair, and not anyone, not trying to insult anyone who is on board with the idea, but that was at the time that all the news was cell phones cause cancer. And I have a feeling that that might be why it was shot down so unanimously. But so with that in mind, I've actually made a point not to go to cellular providers. The technology that we are looking at using is not only in our everyday lives, it is literally, anybody who has a smartphone is currently broadcasting the exact signals that we would be using. Both the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz frequency, this is home Wi-Fi. But these home Wi-Fi devices are heavily directional. So basically, with the dish reflectors, if we're pointing it that way, it's only going that way, and it's in such a shape that the only things that is getting hit with that signal are literally in between them. So nothing. And I'm sorry, Steve.
What I add is
Yes.
So,
Yeah. The average power usage of at least this device, which is actually higher power than what we're looking at using, this device uses about as much power as charging my cell phone does. So they're extremely energy efficient and very, very low power when it comes to the signal. But yeah.
The other thing about the hill back here is there are trees, and you've talked a lot about line of sight.
That's correct.
That would seem like it may be a little bit mutually exclusive. Whereas like up on the hill there, they're doing a lot of clear cutting, which at least I can see from where they're clear cutting from my house.
So now I understand that this doesn't necessarily apply to all of us because not all of us live in this specific area. Originally, the idea of this project was my internet. Then it became lots of people in Camp Creek have an issue, so Camp Creek internet. And then suddenly I got a whole bunch of folks from Mohawk and Marcola contacting me, and it became, okay, Lane County it is. So basically the research that I've done, I've gone through all of the land maps and the parcel maps, contacted every single private owner, whether it's a business or a person, who owns a hilltop that would be reasonable for location in this area. There is currently only 2 individual owners of hilltops that are singular people in this area that could provide adequate service, and unfortunately neither one of those folks, I will say one of them is okay with it as long as we have the money to pay them, which brings it, again, like I was saying, brings about a 30-35% increase, and it brings it out of our price range, in my opinion. The other one had no interest in it. All the other ones are either owned by BLM, who I've actually went privately spoken to. The best estimate that they could give me was somewhere around 6 to 10 years to get a site surveyed, do an environmental survey, and all kinds of other things that are required if it's owned by BLM. And I didn't think that that was a reasonable time frame. And then the final ones are the few clear-cut spots up here, which would be wonderful. Specifically, the companies who own them, I've spoken with each one of the companies who are not only not very interested, but the one company was interested, is afraid that it would cause a insurance problem, as something along the lines of they were afraid that providing power up there could be a fire hazard, so on and so forth. I've done quite a bit of research in this area. Unfortunately, it comes down to very few locations, at least in this area. In other areas such as Mohawk and Marcola, there are many other possibilities, many different private owners up there. So when we move that way, it may become a lot easier.
Could we see which locations are represented here?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask. Can I just ask folks, would you mind giving just a hand if you're from the Camp Creek and Upper Camp Creek area? Wow. Okay. How about the Mohawk area or Marcola area, or let's call it Mohawk Valley? All right. And how about the remainder of the McKenzie Valley?
Dearborn, Booth Kelly.
Yeah,
There we
Booth
go.
Kelly, yeah, baby.
All right. And then finally, is there anyone here from anywhere else? Hey, look at that. So it's good to know the demographic as well as what we're targeting. I of course would love to be able to provide internet, or at least help facilitate getting internet to everyone here. Obviously, we got to start somewhere, though, right? So yes.
As far as, I know you want a hilltop because that would give you the most exposure, but would it be feasible or look into a high portion of a hill that's like as tall as the county hill?
Yes. So
I might know somebody.
so that would be something. That would definitely be something we'd be interested in. Actually, I just had a private landowner who contacted me earlier this week who happens to have a perfect line of sight to my in-laws' house all the way in the town, in the city. So just as a test case, we're probably going to next week try to hook him up. So slap an antenna on my in-laws' house and shoot it out here, see if everything works. So, you know, what works, right? But any locations, there's, again, back on the sign-ups table, let's call it, there is a, goodness, I don't even know what I named the sheet. One of the sheets, basically, it's a relay, there you go. Relay volunteer. So if anybody's interested in potentially helping us bounce the signal to locations, we'd love to have your information. What that would entail basically is permission to do things like put an antenna up in a tree so that you can see our target location, it bounces off of you and goes to somebody else who can't see it. But yeah.
This would be for the main tower.
So this would be the main tower if again, there would be a main tower. let me go ahead and clarify that. There would be a main tower somewhere that potentially would not show everybody available. And well, if there's any dark zones, we can use other households, other private landowners, a hidden tree somewhere on your property that has power to bounce the signal around to increase the range and availability of the signal. So.
Well, Stephen, was that a reasonable suggestion to take it off of the fiber optics cable and have a tower here? Then you could have a tower at Camp Creek, the old Camp Creek School, and we could have towers on community property without despoiling our park.
So, again,
how many people here want to protect the park?
So,
we get it.
Okay.
We get it.
So, I understand your concerns, sir, and I understand your concerns about the park. Again, my apologies. I had no idea on that. When it comes down to that, then it becomes an issue with private landowners, and as any WISP, let's call it, has experienced at some points, private landowners can both be your best friend and your worst enemy. In the case that somebody decides to work on their land and cut your cable and now just took out your entire neighborhood, either that or decides that they want more money or they want your tower down. So it becomes an issue. In places such as the church, we'd have to bring that to the church, the organization that manages and runs this church themselves. As for, take for instance the school down there, the school is no longer a public place, I believe. I believe that school is now a private entity called the Bridgeway House.
Yeah.
So the Bridgeway House is a private special education institute.
I think they're just leasing it.
They purchased, according to the principal there, they purchased it as of August of last year. So, now I could be wrong there, but I talked to him. According to him, they purchased it just a few weeks before being broken into, which, goodness, that stinks. So, yes, ma'am.
This might be a cart before the horse thing, but do systems like this typically run on a backup power source? Because we all know what happens when E-Web comes out around here.
Well, no, that's a wonderful question. What we're looking at right now, at least for a starting point, is solar. Quite literally, solar, a charge controller, and a couple of car batteries runs our system. Now, if we do have an actual power supply, that's great. We'll just keep charging up those batteries until we don't have a power supply.
So the group itself would probably need to sign up for some type of maintenance crew to service these locations and do some general maintenance?
That's a very good question. Whether or not we'd actually need to sign up for things such as maintenance. At the current time, like I said, I personally put about $4,000 into this project. I'm not looking to be paid for my work on the project in the slightest bit. I will be completely frank though, probably if we were to magically have a tower up today and you guys could see the location, I would have a document for you that says, this is what you need to buy, this is how you set it up. If you want me to set it up, contact me, but I do apologize, I'll require payment on that, because that takes away from my other job. If you want to set it up yourself though, here's instructions on how. So, I mean, when it comes down to maintenance, I feel that's the exact same thing. Let's call it the tower location, that kind of maintenance, of course, would have to be done by the organization, whether they hire somebody or get a volunteer
So it'd be a board
treat.
decision, basically.
Exactly. And I do apologize if I sound very vague on many of these answers. I don't want to ever come across as a dictator on any of this. If there's a decision to be made, I don't feel I have the right to make it. I feel that that the board should have the right to make it. So I just don't feel like I should be the one telling you guys how to do anything. So anyone else? Oh,
Have you talked to Bonneville at all?
Bonneville Power. No, I have not, and somebody suggested that early last week, unfortunately. Last week I put it.
I know a lot about Bonneville.
Oh.
They're very expensive, very hard to work with, and we have more money than you guys do, and I would never be able to work with them unless I'm They have engineering study, environmental studies, but then you also have to sign, their minimums are very expensive, so. You know, we were looking at Sports Point, I don't know if you know what that is, it's the little hill that's right next to where Mackenzie View and I-5 are, so not in the Covert Hills, but like that little hill right before there that's being quarried. So Bonneville has a tower there, it's got a lot of antennas on it, but if I recall, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, they wanted $6,000 a month minimum from us for one antenna.
What a
They
deal.
kind of have like a weird thing where you can put a lot of antennas on and it still costs you about $6,000, but they wouldn't bill you less than $6,000 a month. And so we're like, and we're like way outside of that. Like that's an AT&T, Verizon, because that's such a prime spot right on that 5 corridor, and Bonneville knows it. But all of their stuff is expensive. Even leasing fiber, we wanted to lease fiber from Eugene to Florence, but drop off in Mapleton so we could offer service in Mapleton. Well, BPA said, we'll only do it if we lease fiber from Eugene to Coos Bay. And they wanted to charge a lot for it. So there's only one provider that uses that fiber, even though they have a lot of it. So they're very hard to work with.
And we actually have a similar thing going on here, the ISPs that I looked into that would, of course, terminate in the town, or in the city. We do have, let's call it, more typical providers such as Comcast and CenturyLink who want to sell us stuff at actually a pretty reasonable price, but are not willing to give us things such as a service level agreement. Basically what each and every one of us need out here, being that they're not actually providing us the service that they say that they're providing us. But when we go with a company, other companies such as Level 3, Cogent, but more business-oriented companies, we actually have to pay for a connection coming from Portland, Oregon, and the majority of our bill is actually the transport to get from Portland to here. If I remember right, I think the actual internet connection itself costs $600 a month. Of the $2,300 a month, everything else is the ability to use the dark fiber that's run all the way down here. So it's unfortunate, but it does open up some really neat possibilities if it were to get going. Things such as really good access to Netflix or YouTube, these kinds of things that may not be important for some, maybe literally why some of us are here today. I'll admit mine's for work, but it's also for play. I would love to be able to watch any of the movies or things. Sit my kids down in front of a movie that we don't have to drive to town and back to get. just be a nice little thing for me at least. Well, I guess I want to thank everybody for coming. I really do appreciate the time. Steve?
I just want to say for the record, Steve has done a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I know you guys can see it, but like for somebody who's in the industry and knows what it takes to do something like this, it is so much work that he has put out. So, you know, whether we're involved or not is okay as long as, in my mind, as long as you guys get internet service, I'm happy. It is a very, very challenging area. I promise you we would have been out here 15 years ago if it wasn't so challenging.
Yeah.
So I want to be clear, like,
Subscribers would you want?
oh, I've done, so I was just saying, I did a project that was about 15 miles southwest of Dexter on Rattlesnake for 5 customers. Because 5 people really wanted service and we figured out how to get them service. So I would have done it for 5 people out here if it was easy to do. So it is a very, very challenging area. It's not to say it can't be done, but it is very challenging. So you should understand the challenge ahead to be able to do that. Lots and lots of relay.
Yep.
Which is hard for, it's harder for a company like us, I'll just admit it, because if somebody's connection comes from 10 homes away and somewhere on the chain somebody's service goes down, we're going to get a phone call saying, why is my internet down? And initially you guys may be very supportive, but 3 years from now, your internet is down. And you've had it for 3 years and it's been working, and I say, well, it's because 10 homes down, somebody's on vacation, and their circuit breaker flipped. Like, those things cause problems, and they're very hard for a company like us to overcome sometimes, but easier for you guys as a community-driven business. That is one